Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Alex Weir channel. I'm Alex Weir. I have a website called the Fractal Journal where you'll find stories, ideas, and more. So, we have a sad state of affairs in the country in terms of the legal climate, by which I mean the kinds of legislations that are being passed, and not only legislations, but the color of the ideation behind them. The term color I'm kind of extrapolating from the idea of the letter and color of the law. Okie doke. So what happened recently is the Rachel Maddow defense basically has held water. This is funny considering the censorious nature of pretty much everything else. So, in order to uphold free speech, the United States legal system has said that Rachel Maddow, who was defaming people as Russian agents, calling them literally Russian agents or paid by the Russians, was just expressing an opinion that her show is a liberal show that is understood to be such, to be partisan, and basically, even though it is on a network that is associated with the news and where people get their news, it's just implied that what she says is sometimes hyperbolous and for the sake of rhetoric. Right. Okay, well, while that's going on, we have big tech being allowed to censor in any which way they want because, we don't want to curtail the free speech of companies. As per this article, which I'm going to go through right here, we got state legislators grappling to address big tech censorship. And it comes from the Epoch Times, the Wednesday, August 11, 2021 edition. Okay, so this right here says, states are busy looking for ways to curb big tech's outsized power as Google, Facebook, and Twitter have ramped up censorship in recent months. Okay, fair enough. Good. We have people taking an interest in promoting the way the country is supposed to function. But wait. Confronting tech censorship, however, has been especially challenging for free market-minded legislators who struggle to achieve the right balance between regulating social media platforms and promoting innovation and free enterprise. Why? That just makes me laugh out loud. Why are you struggling between regulating social media platforms and promoting innovation and free enterprise? You're not regulating them. You're regulating their ability to curtail the freedom of other people. You're not telling them how to run their business. You're telling them that they can't act as a basically undue influence on American politics. Okay. So, while state legislators are growing frustrated with big tech, there's no easy solution to the censorship problem, according to Lisa Nelson, CEO of American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, an organization of state legislators that advocates for limited government and free markets. See, this is the problem that I have with libertarian groups, and this sounds like a regular libertarian group, is that they take that idea of limited government too far. Libertarian is still a party, and it still entails governance. It's still a form of governance, and they have such an almost pathology around governing that they don't want to do it where it's applicable. Because my free enterprise, right? Because, the taxpayer-funded websites, corporations like Google are, of course, the epitome of free enterprise, right? Okay. We're not for government picking winners and losers. You won't be by having folks who receive taxpayer money not curtail the rights and the effectiveness in discourse of taxpayers. That's just what? The issue of big tech censorship was a hot topic at the annual meeting of the ALEC in July. The three-day conference brought together more than 1,000, mostly Republican state and local leaders in Salt Lake City, to discuss a wide range of policy issues, from education to tax and fiscal policy. Yay. Content moderation on social media platforms and taxing tech companies were among the topics discussed at the meeting. It should have been the only topic. It's a pretty big topic. But okay, here we go. On the tech content censorship issues, it's going to involve long conversations about how to get it right. Is it? Or can you just get it right by getting it right, which would be right in accordance with the way that this country is supposed to function, where you're supposed to be able to speak, where things that are, in essence, public utilities act as such and not as a weird merger of a corporation and government interests in order to promote a certain worldview at the taxpayer's expense. This is not hard. On the tech content censorship issues, it's going to involve long conversation, but I get it right, Nelson said, adding that the legislators have been in talks with technology firms. I think that tech companies also want to get it right. Do they? Do they? Or do they want to get it right for themselves in a way that accords with their worldview and they influence as much influence as they can have on the world in accordance with what they believe is for the greater good? I mean, just look at this picture of Jack Dorsey. He thinks that he is some kind of monk, that he is some kind of spiritual guru. That's the impression that I get from this demeanor, from this hairstyle. Or it could just be his reaction to the psychological stress of the position, but at the same time, no, I think that there's a little bit of ego there, to say the least. Okay. I think the tech companies also want to get it right. They want to find a solution. They don't like being in this position. Well, they don't have to be in this position. They can very easily say, look, we have protections that keep us from getting in trouble for what people say on our website. We are not a publisher. We are a platform, and as such, we are not going to regulate these things unless they are flat out illegal, like calling for an insurrection, etc. But for some reason, this, when you actually meet face-to-face with very rich people with a lot of money that use weasel words, becomes difficult, especially if you're a libertarian. And, you really got that boner for business. See, there was a podcast, I forget exactly what it was. I think it was called Come Down. I know that's a gross name, but that's what it's called. Where they said, yeah, libertarians are basically cucks for big business. And that seems to hold to be the truth. I think the tech blah blah. Republicans criticize tech giants for unfairly censoring speech in the name of social good, and they do. They certainly do. As this Media Research Center has identified 2,500 cases of big tech silencing conservatives online since March 2020. The list includes suspending the accounts of sitting President Donald Trump in January, removal of the conservative platform Parler from Google and Apple, and censoring the New York Post Hunter Biden stories. States including Florida, Texas, Utah, and North Dakota have pushed for laws to fight tech censorship. Now get this. This is the result of that push. In May, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation to hold big technology companies accountable for suppressing free speech and to protect Floridians' ability to access and participate in online platforms. Florida was the first state to attempt to regulate big tech companies. However, a federal judge, so a guy that has risen to such a position of power and influence in the country, that is supposed to understand how the country works, has made this boneheaded move. On June 30th, issued a preliminary injunction blocking enforcement of the law. So what did the law entail? Let's see if we can shine a light on why he would have trouble with making this law enforceable, shall we? This law requires social media companies to be more transparent about how they deplatform users and allows any person to sue these companies for up to $100,000 in damages. It also introduces fines against social media companies that ban political candidates. Okay, I could see how that could, from a judge's perspective that knows how the legal system works, be problematic because there's already a bunch of bottlenecks. The court systems are pretty much throttled, backed up by a lot of frivolous cases, and everybody trying to get a penny out of YouTube screaming about censorship is not going to be very good. That's one defense I can make of it. But, he could have, instead of flat out canceling this, been like, hey, make some changes here, maybe bring it back to me. Maybe he did do that, but yeah, as far as, introducing fines against banning political candidates, etc., that seems perfectly reasonable to me. That's very cut and dry, whereas the other one where, you can sue YouTube up to $100,000 for them censoring you seems a little bit strange. How about, instead of even making it like $100,000, like punitive like that, just say, hey, if we find that you have unfairly throttled somebody's ability to speak, then we are going to tell you to stop. And if you don't stop, then there's going to be a criminal charge, and then you'll, yada yada. Not pay damages to the party, but pay damages to the government. Lobby groups, or at least pay damages for the court proceedings that would kind of address the problem of too many cases being presented. But hopefully there wouldn't be many cases presented if YouTube and all these other things behave themselves. Lobby groups representing Facebook, Twitter, and major websites challenged the law in federal court, claiming that it violated private companies' right to freedom of speech protected by the First Amendment. Okay, right here. Private companies, I know that a corporation is considered a person in some kind of way, legalistically, at least from what the scuttlebutt that I've heard. But a company is not a person, and the speech, that they don't have freedom of speech because they're not a publisher, they're a platform, because they are protected under what I think is like Section 230 privileges, where they can't get into trouble for things hosted on their site. That renders them not a speaker, that renders them to be a platform. So, and this is them curtailing other people's speech, not their speech being curtailed. Like, you not being allowed to tell somebody to shut up is not a curtailing of your speech. Like, to me not being allowed to put my hand over somebody's mouth and get them to stop talking because I am in a powerful enough position to do that is not, a curtailing of my freedom of speech. This is not, shutting somebody up is not freedom of speech. That's a ridiculous, on its face argument in any which way, even legalistically speaking. I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I think that if you think about it for a little bit and you think about the laws and the nature and the color of the law, it's not going to make sense. If you do, comment down below. But you're going to have a hell of a time convincing me. Large corporations are using their economic power to impose their values, and it's really troublesome. Yeah, you think? Mark Wright, a Republican state lawmaker from Louisiana, told the Epoch Times, while politicians shouldn't interfere with businesses, he said, companies such as Facebook and Google are clearly using a power that we've not seen really a whole lot in our nation. And again, you are not interfering with businesses any more than businesses are already being interfered with in a million different ways. In fact, this is one of the least intrusive things where you're just disallowing the curtailing of the rights of citizens to communicate on something that is in essence a public utility, since it is in fact, funded by taxpayer dollars. Like a lot of the infrastructure that was built in order to make Google possible came from taxpayers. It came from incentives from government shit. So yeah, it's just prima facie dumb. Okay. While legislators feel very upset about the tech censorship, they are all over the map because they have, in my opinion, monetary interests, and they have muddled ideological views based on a kind of infantile moralism that has to do with my freedom of business. Since they have different perspectives on how to deal with it. ALEC chief economist Jonathan Williams told Epoch Times, most ALEC members espouse limited government and their instinctive reaction, let's not overregulate, let's certainly not break up companies, he said. Okay, fine, you can have that instinct, but that instinct has nothing to do with the situation at hand, which is the undue influence of corporations on people, taxpayers being able to speak in the United States. Okay, Utah, for example, one of the states that seek to regulate big tech, has prioritized cutting red tape for years to become more business-friendly. Implementing policies in line with free market principles that has helped the state, making it the fastest growing. Okay, so here we go. A little bit of jerking off about how good it is for business to be completely unfettered, and Utah is a great success. So what does that have to do with the national issue of big tech censorship? Nothing. Because providing the ability for small, medium-sized, and even large corporations of various stripes to operate with less stricture has nothing to do with upholding a very basic, unintrusive tenet of freedom of speech. Am I crazy here? People tend to vote with their feet. They tend to go where there are free market. Google and Facebook are not going to go anywhere out of the United States where they sprang out of, where they operate out of, where most of the revenue, I'm assuming, comes from. even via taxpayer money. They're not going to go anywhere because you tell them you can't get Joe Republic to shut up willy-nilly, okay? That's not going to happen. That's not a real legitimate fear. This, again, is a fetish on the part of not only, Republicans, but libertarians, where they're not being aggressive enough because, one, monetary interest, like look, I'm suspecting, and two, more likely, or a bigger chunk of it, again, ideological, just fixation. However, Adams and some free market-oriented legislators now believe that regulation to some degree is necessary to protect internet users. No shit. Utah policymakers are still trying to figure out a way to address the censorship problem and protect Utahns from unfair suppression. Legislators are wary about the unintended consequences, such as penalizing successful companies and violating their freedoms. You are not penalizing a successful company. The company was not successful because of any kind of its merits. It's because of the inherent ubiquity, monopolistic nature of the technology. Like there can only be so many companies that become large enough to become major carriers of fucking phone service plans. The same thing with internet, and those things are tied into taxpayer infrastructure. That has nothing to do with the case at hand. And you are not violating the freedom of speech of these companies because they are not publishers, they are platforms. This is not the case. This is completely missing the point, you fuck nuggets. But some legal experts say that large tech platforms function as a common carrier and therefore question their First Amendment claims. Yeah. And even if that wasn't the case, they are... You don't even need the common carrier part. You can just have the platform part. It's a platform, okay? According to Philip Hamburger, a professor at Columbia Law School, a tech company should be treated as a common carrier if it serves a public function or enjoys a market dominance. Or, as I put in a little side note, taxpayer funds. In an op-ed he co-authored for the Wall Street Journal, he said that large social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter meet both definitions. No shit. The speech at stake is not the speech of the companies, but the speech of others that they convey. That's what I have been repeating this whole time. The speech at stake is not the speech of the companies, but the speech of others that they convey. The speech at stake is not the speech of the companies, but the speech of others that they convey. He said, adding that tech companies participate in the censorship because of Section 230 privileges, part of the U.S. Communications Decency Act. More like Indecency Act. What is this? What is this curtailing of language in Karen-esque, just busybody soccer mom thing that goes back to the 80s and probably Tipper Gore and all that nonsense from being sued for the content they host? It therefore is not unreasonable for states to protect Americans from the tech companies' government-sponsored censorship. Yes, that fascism, thank you, government-sponsored censorship in conjunction with large corporations is fascism. We don't need it in the United States. This is the sad state of affairs that I'm talking about, how it contrasts with what I began this video with that Maddow defense, which actually held water, as she's allowed to say anything willy-nilly and have the aura of being a credible source on a news site, which is not a news site, it's an opinion site, but it is a news site, in a nebulous area, and operate and say all kinds of crazy things. But if you don't hold the opinions of people that have the ability to throttle stuff, well, you better watch out because, well, they have a right to freedom of speech. What a sick and twisted world we're living in, ladies and gentlemen. There's still a lot of goodness and beauty in the world. Hopefully, I'll be able to do some writing on other subjects as time presents itself. But thanks so much for listening. I hope you found this informative, and take care, everybody.